God help.
I need some help.
Help me! Help! You exploit them and spread whatever problems they have to the whole world. You think that's helping?
I love you. It's like, why don't we say that every day? Why can't we say it more often?
I just love you. I just want to go to the rooftops and scream, I love my best friend.
Howdy, y'all. What the fuck is up? I'm Willard, and this is Twinkle Dads, an emo advice show. You probably already know this opening gist, but if you don't, if you'd like to send in a question asking for personal advice about anything and everything, whether it be relationships, work problems, philosophical quandaries, so on and so forth, that you want me or one of the very special guests I have on to answer on a future episode, you can do 4 things to send in those questions. You could email me at twinkledad69@gmail.com. You could DM me on Twitter and or Instagram at Emo Advice Show. You could text me on a phone line that I set up, 775-710-5150. Or if you ask nicely, I'll give you my address so you could put a pipe bomb in my mailbox. If I'm not home and it goes off, I won't snitch. But if I am, well, I would have read your question before it. So the purpose of the show is to be for you, the listener. I think empathy is the main priority we have here because I personally think it's so fucking cool how humans have empathy and like our ability to care so much for another person and what they're going through and to feel so much love or so much pain. And the fact that we just continuously have those very strong feelings throughout our lives is just such a miraculous thing, but also I believe that if you're going through something that troubles you, whatever it may be, and if you don't give empathy to yourself for what you're going through, if you're trying to shut your feelings down or ignore them or whatever it may be, then I don't think you can give empathy to other people and their problems. Like I want to be there for you so you can be there for yourself and therefore be there for others. This is not like I'm not trying to like faux therapy because this is very much not that, but it's a form just to kind of talk and let things at ease and for you to always know and remind yourself that everything will be okay and that there are strangers who love and care about you, and that there's always an avenue open for you. There's exactly 4 avenues that I just listed for you to, talk to and to open up to and to just let you know that everything will be okay and that this is a safety blanket and that strangers like me or the very many musicians that we have on, for them to tell you that they care about you, if that makes sense. So once again, you can email twinkledad69@gmail.com, DM me on Twitter and or Instagram at Emo Advice Show. 775-710-5150 is my phone number, or you could just blow up my fucking house. You have 4 options. Looking forward, I just want to say once again, thank you so much to Nikki of Star Funeral for coming on the last episode and being the first Twinkle Dad's podcast interview. Like I said, there are a lot of technical difficulties, and I think just getting like adjusted to it, like a lot of nerves to like try to settle down in the moment. But I think the coolest part of that episode was just, Nikki opening up and kind of bearing it all, because when you listen to In the Dark, which is her new album out on Count Your Lucky Stars Records, you already get the sense that it's very vulnerable and personal and close to their heart, and to like let them just kind of like break down what it's like to put art out there. in front of friends and families who will question it. It's like, it's just to watch like that honesty is just so sick, and it's definitely very admirable. Not to mention she made a great album and is just a really wonderful musician. So check that episode out, listen to In the Dark, out on Count Your Lucky Stars Records, and yeah, and give her all the love and support that you can. It was funny because the day that episode was released, I was able to record another interview, which I'm very, very excited about, but I can't say anything until when it comes out for reasons you'll see. But it's just looking forward and bright for Twinkle Dads. And, you know, it's also cool whenever I do get the opportunity to ask like musicians that like, you know, I look up to or I like very much appreciate their art. Like I ask them these questions and there's just like this interest and like enthusiasm to like hear y'all out and to talk about you, the listener who sends in questions. It's sick. I just feel so much love and joy in my heart about it. So yeah, very thankful for the opportunities that are being given. Um, so yeah, so that's what it is. Looking forward, as this very small podcast continues to try to grow. Um, One last note before we kind of get on to the questions. For a complete moment of transparency, I must talk about an incident that happened regarding this podcast yesterday. Um, promoting art just kind of blows. I think, especially like the vanity of it, I think is the worst part because, like, you know, especially in a podcast like this where it's meant to help you, it's just like it's very hard to have to be like, hey, this is for the listeners, but care about like, you know, me in a sense. So I'm trying to like figure out and develop like a healthy relationship with it, you know, and it's slowly growing. But one of them is just like finding like silly ways to spread word about the podcast and get more potential listeners. And the way that I did yesterday when I was bored was I went on Among Us under the name Twinkle Dad, because they don't allow Twinkle Dad because of the word twink, which sets up the incident that happened. I went on Among Us to promote the podcast, and I asked myself what could go worse than like getting banned or being told no, or like I don't know, being called like stupid for doing it, which all three of those things happened, but they weren't the first thing that happened. What really set the tone was I joined a random public lobby and I was like, do y'all like podcasts? Listen to mine. It's called Twinkle Dad, a self-help, emo, hardcore punk, whatever podcast. And I like plug the socials and all that to be like, I'm here for you. And then the first response was from a user with the name I Hate Gays. I'm not at liberty, nor do I feel comfortable expressing the message that was said in response, but it was very vitriolic and explicit, and just kind of was like, "Word, okay, cool. Like this is what sets the tone." But you know, sometimes you just live for the humility, and that's just life. Because at the end of the day, you know, whenever people do send questions, as long as it helps you, then you know everything on my part is going well. So yeah, once again, sending all the love and just want to express gratitude for how everything's going so far and how I believe it will go in the future. Today we are answering two questions. The first one about long lost connections, and the second one about marijuana usage. I this it's I as I put it in my notes, and I think how I will promote it, like when it like publishes, when the episode is public, is this is about fucking around and getting high. That's just what it is. Therefore, the songs I use to answer the questions are very pummeling, cathartic, and they all like kind of have the same pace and beat, if that makes sense. Usually I try for sonic diversity, but it just didn't feel right for the tone. So that's just what the energy is going to be like today. So I want you, the listener, to be prepared for it. But first, we'll also, I just want to, this is also like a bit of a departure too, because the opening song, I always like want it to be short and like brand new, just to like get your bones a little riled up. But this is not the case, because if you don't know, the Toronto-based band Kixie just dropped a new album called Slouch on Counterintuitive Records. Almost called to Count Your Lucky Stars again. And it's really fucking good. It's super catchy. Like some like wonderfully like delectable emo indie pop, and with like very just like charming lyrics and like melodies, and just like the hooks. Like there's just this like very sweet and like enthusiastic charisma to it that's just hard to deny, and I just want to use it as a palate cleanser before we get on, because you should check it out. So I'm picking the lead single off that album, which was released back in February. It's called You're On. It's by the band Kixie, and I really hope you enjoy it. And then we'll get on to our questions. Thank you all so much, and you mean the world to me. I'll talk to you all oh so soon. Bye bye.
Talk
Hey, Twinkle Dad. I've been very emotional the past couple of weeks, mainly for reasons unknown, but one reason I've been able to pinpoint is due to a girl. A romance that was a missed opportunity. We were friends for over a year and texted daily and always had an interesting but offbeat romantic interest for each other. We were on a basis of texting each other almost constantly, down to the day. And right when we started to get in the right wavelength with each other, expressing feelings, being very vocal about how excited we were to see each other, etc., she announced to me she had a boyfriend. It felt as though I had been stabbed in the back, led on, you named it. I had been on and off with her before, but it wasn't immediately disrupted by one of us being in a relationship. Usually it was just rescheduling to get drinks with one another. I never responded to her after this text, in which she also told me she had feelings for me, and it just feels like things left off in the least efficient way possible. Telling me she has a boyfriend, but immediately after saying she has had a crush on me this whole time. It was heartbreaking. She said she didn't want any interaction with me because she felt guilty due to her new relationship, but also confessed feelings. It was the most bittersweet thing I may have ever read. I've been in limbo deciding if I should reach out to her again or not, because I do feel like she's a great match for me, but I don't want to impede on her current relationship, if it is still a thing. I do not know since we haven't been in contact. Please let me know your thoughts, and thank you. Wowza. What a sticky little situation to be in. And I'm so sorry that you're going through that. Um, I think when it comes to love, and I think when it also just comes to talking to others about love, you kind of have to like overcome two things. One, as much as we like to deny it, there isn't a science to love. There is nothing objective to love, you know? And therefore it just like can take very many different shapes and people will be like, "Oh, love will absolutely make you act like this." But at the end of the day, that's not true because you're unable to prove what it's like to be in love versus what it's not. It's simply a heart and a body thing. And then, not only is that like there and a problem when it comes to discourse about love, everybody also has different ideas of what it means to be in love and like how one should approach it. And I think because of that, you just see a lot of people grasping for answers, possibly as like a coping mechanism or like a way to just kind of be like, well, I'm not in the wrong because, this is fact. Like, facts are better than feelings. As like, and that's just a way to put it. Like, that's kind of the sad truth is when you know something for certain, it's almost relieving than a constant back and forth in your brain. And I think because of that, when thinking of a way to just kind of like get into your shoes and like be in that room with you and try to like look at the situation through your lens, I just had to figure out what would make most sense. And so the idea or the framework or the glasses I decided to put on to kind of approach this and address this might be different from yours, might not. But it's like an idea and a thought that I don't necessarily agree with, but it's also the closest thing that we have to an objective science about love. And that I know I've been approached by people who have learned about this thought, about this philosophy, and had been like, yes, this is where it's at. So, so there are people who do find truth in it. And I think, even though I have mixed feelings about what it's saying, and I'll talk about it soon, it's a great way to understand and shape what forward action should be for you. And it's from Eric Fromm's book, The Art of Loving, which honestly, I think if you're interested in like very light theoretical text, you should read it. It's also just like a lot of a person just like saying like my subjective experience, what I experience should be fact, which that's just not how the world works, unfortunately. And it talks about specifically, I'm talking about his idea that love is obedience. Um, and that we find like what we're attracted to and what we believe relationships should be um, comes from what makes us want to obey. You let's say I walk into a room and I see someone that I'm attracted to, and I'm like, wowza, I might be in love. The course of action that I would take would be when talking to this person, when flirting, when trying to rizz them up. I'm kind of obedient to the situation. You're kind of like feeding in. You kind of want to be a puppy dog who wants to be scrouched because you know that if you try to deny the situation or if you try to reject it, that that the relationship won't go forward. You won't have a relationship if you aren't obedient to the circumstances that you're put in. Um, so you're talking to them and it's just like, oh, I want to play some video games at this bar. It's like, oh yes, like I love video games. I want to play video games with you. And Eric Fromm believes that's because you want to play by the rules in order to get what you want. Um, and I know that there are a lot of people who do believe that and adhere to that like 50 years later or 40 years later, no matter what, a long time after the book was written. And so I'm bringing that up, and I think that's essentially what we're going to talk about when talking about what to do about hitting this girl back up. Um, and so Yeah, so I wanna bring that up as a rule, and also I wanna talk about something that I find interesting about, the idea of that love is obedience, is then what's not love? Well, like, when you're disobedient, then what is that? So, I think it's like a shallow way to look at it, but for the sake of it, let's just say that love is obedience and platonic relationships is disobedience. Does that make sense? I hope it does. And so, let's just take that. And then I want to ask you two questions with what I just said about love being obedience in mind. One, do you still have feelings for this person? And two, what is there to gain from hitting them up? What do you want? What are you trying to get out of it? Think about it. I picked one song to just kind of start us off, and then there are more songs later after I kind of fully answer your question. But it's a long song and it's a very frenetic song. And even though it's not quite about your situation, there is kind of like this desperate lust in how it's written and how it's performed and the lyrics that I think like makes sense. Like listening to it while thinking about your question got my brain chemistry churning. It's an emo punk song, or not an emo punk, a math punk song from Rest Ashore, a band based in New Jersey that is very overlooked, and definitely it's just like they know how to write riffs and they know how to write hooks. And for math rock, that's like very like, wow, this is a very poppy hook when you're just hearing like when you're just barraged with a bunch of noodling. So I hope it does the same for you. It's called Chinese Opera. It's quite a loaded song. I recommend looking at the lyrics on their Bandcamp. but just listen to it, chew on it, and chew on everything going on. And then we'll talk about it when you're in the right headspace. So once again, this is Chinese Opera by Rest Ashore. And then we'll be talking all about you. Thank you so much, and I'll see you oh so soon. Welcome back. So let's go back to the last question I asked. Why hit her up? Thinking about it for her sake, it's hard to be put in a situation where it feels like someone is only reaching out to you because they want to date you or get at you. Not saying that's your full intention, but like, when asked that question and you thought about it and you're like, you know what? I'm still attracted to her and I still want to pursue that relationship. It's tough because it's holistically possible months down the line from when y'all last spoke that is no longer of interest. And it's just kind of a turnoff when I think when you just get like hit up by someone who clearly only like wants one thing, and it can, like, I don't know, feel a bit shallow, feel a bit desperate, whether or not that's like your intention with it. That's just how it is, and that's just the sake of the dynamic. um if you're hitting her up because there are still some unresolved romantic feelings and you don't hide that, aka acting obedient to the situation, it's most likely going to make her feel awkward. And I think another layer to it is, I'm just presuming that the gender dynamic, and this will just always come, like, in general, no matter like what the gender dynamic is, when it's a dude hitting up, like, a woman about it's a dude hitting up a woman in this context. you know there is just, some dudes are horny, and that, like, most of the time it is like this, like, kind of like predatory thing. So it's truly like, I would say, first of all, think about how she would feel, and what would you believe would be most comfortable. Even though, like, like you said, y'all have been on and off before, even when y'all had been in relationships. So, you already have solid ground for like what it could be like for y'all to have a platonic friendship, and so if you feel comfortable, you can like dip into that and kind of honor the platonic nature of y'all's relationship. Then go for it. As long as you're giving her the respect in this situation, I think that is like solid grounds to move forward. As long as you're respecting, how you truly feel and what you should do. Because yeah, I'm sure we all know, we've all had friends and we've all seen people do shit like that, where they hit someone up that they haven't spoken to just because they want to get laid, and it comes off as cringy and awkward and a bit stupid and weird and a bit predatory. Once again, not calling you it, but looking at it at the surface, that's a lot of the time that's what it looks like. um i I immediately thought of a story that happened to a friend that I think just kind of sums it up. It's related. It's hilarious. I've gotten permission to tell it, but I won't leak who it is. But I just, when I was thinking about your question and what the relationship dynamic looks like from a very shallow perspective, I thought of when my friend was 17 and he was hooking up with this person from Tinder, and that, like, for like, I want to say like half a year, so 6 months, they weren't speaking. And he randomly slid into her DMs one day and was like, yo, what's up, how are you? And she goes, I'm fucking terrible, my boyfriend is in prison. And his first response was, well, do you want to hang out and get together then? And I think he got blocked for that, reasonably so. He does not, I talked to him about it. He does not agree with what he did, but That's just the first thing you need to look at is how can you respect her boundaries and her feelings in this. And then again, it's just so difficult because since y'all haven't spoken, you don't know what those boundaries are. But you can just safely presume like what lines you shouldn't cross. So, yeah, if you ask yourself that, why hit her up for her sake? Now, I'm going to ask you, why hit her up for your sake? You know, I'm admittedly a bit worried about this situation for you because there is a sign that isn't directly like there is a sign that got mentioned in the actions how you display it. Once again, there's always two sides from the story, but let's take how you're viewing it. It's not fully worrisome, but it's something that I think you should prod, and that is how does her boyfriend feel about her actions? How does he feel that she has had a crush and had feelings for you while in the relationship? Would it be safe to assume that he would feel uncomfortable, a bit upset, a bit distressed by that going on? Um, I'm just going to assume that you said yes, because I feel like any partner, unless y'all are like polyamorous, would feel like, okay, that's a bit fucked up. Like any sort of cheating's fucked up, but emotional cheating, like that is like the signature crime, and by doing that and by openly admitting that you're emotionally cheating, if it's not to your partner, but to the person you're emotionally cheating on your partner with, that's kind of bad. I would like, the best way to put it is like, let's say in a dream situation where that relationship ended, you hit her up, and then it's like suddenly y'all are together in a relationship. How would you feel if she admits to other people that she has feelings for another person, but even though she's in a relationship and won't pursue him, she is actively emotionally cheating? That's bad. Most people would consider that a red flag. I won't quite use that language because once again, we are like hearing it from one side. But like, how would you feel? That would be upsetting. It would be really scary. And I think most importantly, heartbreaking, especially if this relationship goes through like the ups and downs that it did on and off for a year. Right when it becomes something, it suddenly ends. And even though you're persistent, it comes back and you've been through all that suffering, all those highs and the lows, just for you to get emotionally cheated on. At the end of the day, that's like a net negative. That is more harm than good. And so I will just like, lead that off with that would that make you uncomfortable? And is that a sign that she's right for you? Um, so, but that's speaking about like that hypothetical of if it works out in your favor and y'all end up in a relationship. But realistically, her and her partner haven't broken up yet. So, if you hit her up, she's still in a relationship, yet wants to be friends and wants you in her life. Do you think you can handle your emotions right? Do you think you can be mature about it and honor her boundaries? Because, romantic interest, like being like romantically entangled with someone, it causes that weird dynamic that I brought up, the idea that love is obedience. Because, when you are showing that obedient love to someone who is showing a disobedient platonic interest, the one who's showing obedience, like, is the desperate one. is the one grasping for straws, and I think like that is a formula for an awkward, uncomfortable, and like just troublesome, toxic situation, and it's not worth like lying to anyone or yourself. Like you can say that you aren't interested in her, even if you are. That's lying, and that's lack of empathy, and that can only, i feel I feel like it can only lead to a very tumultuous outcome, only predated by a very tumultuous situation. So, there's a lot of, I think, what ifs, and there's a lot of things that I cannot definitively say is right or wrong for you to do, because it is a tricky situation. But I think the one thing you can do just to open it up is be truthful. Be utterly truthful. If you think that you can contact her and be in a relationship, whether platonic or romantic, in a way that you aren't lying to yourself about anything, or that you aren't trying to deceive yourself or her for gain, then go for it. But if you are, then I would say that it's not worth pursuing for your sake and hers. If you The best way to put it is, I would look for what would cause the least amount of harm, and what is true to you and what's true in your heart. For full transparency, if I was in your situation, I would genuinely never engage again. It feels like a very caustic situation in its foundation, how it was built, and how it, like, what it's being built towards, like how it's going so far. Yet, if you want to reach out for any sort of closure about the situation, I would almost wait for the relationship to end, or for her to be the one to reach out. Which, both of that's tricky because, like you said, you have no idea to know when it ends, like when that relationship will end, or even if it's ended so far. Who fucking knows? You're in the dark about it, But I think if you wait for that, like, clearance, that will take away a lot of the things that are like blurring the situation currently. That's like that puts a specific like tint on it, and it also gives you the freedom to be to the point about how you're feeling, because you don't have to worry about, like, like confessing your quote unquote love to someone in a relationship. um it could also be, that's like freedom for you to be like, yo, are you in or are you out? If it works out, great. But if it doesn't, you could put a bow tie on that relationship and send it off to the sea. As long as you respect yourself and you respect them, and that it doesn't come from a point of desperation, but instead of something you're sure about, then I believe that's the right decision. It sucks. Like, I could feel the secondhand suck and shittiness from this, and I feel for you. It's hard to continue to feel like the big bright sun shining in your face about love and relationships when, the person you're attracted to is attracted to you, but that relationship isn't happening. you know so honor yourself first, so you can then honor her and honor her feelings. Don't be creepy about it. Don't be desperate about it. Just own up to yourself, and try to figure out how you truly feel and what you truly think you should do. So yeah, I hoped that helped. I picked two songs for this. um I picked the first one, which is Birds of Prey by the SoCal band Callers, for one part. And like kind of one part only. It's a good song as a whole. But um I'll just say this, how they say one in a million just fucking hits, like, when there's just a random gang vocal part. And I feel like that's the true emo spirit, it's like if it's like the woos, you always love an emo woo band. And the line makes sense because it's about like, mixed communication between yourself and a partner. So it's relevant to your situation. Ta-da. And then the other one is it's a song about drowning. It's a song I actually discovered on TikTok because the person who sang for this band, um, he made a TikTok about it and saying how the material wasn't on the internet for like over a decade, and then he put it out, and it's like actually like pretty decent. Like it's an old unearthed Midwest Scrams band that I think if it had been released properly in the time that it was made, it would be part of the cultural and scene lexicon. So yeah, so that's Dire Dire Docks by Jacques Roch. Um, yeah, it's all for you, and I want you to know that I've been thinking about you, and I want you to just treat yourself tenderly and kindly during this because fuck, dude. Yeah, I understand not seeing a way out. So, yeah, if it helped, great. If it didn't, then I'm sorry. You can tell me either way, but I'm sending you only love and only my heart, and that if you'd like to just reach out and talk about it some more, I'm always here for you. So, yeah, on to the next question. But beforehand, two final songs for you: Birds of Prey by Callers, and then Dire Dire Docks by Jacques Roch. Thank you so much, and I'll talk to you oh so soon. Bye bye now.
I make it easy 'cause I have to. It's all we make.
Dear Twinkle Dad, as you know, I be smoking the ganja on the regular. If I'm being honest, I think I'm addicted. But like at the same time, it makes my life so much better. I feel like I'm living my best life. I've never been so happy. I'm successful in work. I'm happily engaged, but I have this guilt like it's all going to be taken away because I like to inhale some smoke sometimes. I really think if I cut it out of my life, it would just not be the same. What should I do, Twinkle Dad? Uh, oh, I'm going to be honest, this is tough. It is really, really, really tough. Um, when it comes to substances, whether prescribed or recreational, I feel very miffed about it philosophically. And I think part of it's because I used to be straight edge and I like used to claim it. And it was when I guess just like growing up, just to let you know, my way into it, I growing up, and I think like once you also just get into philosophy and the idea of it, there's a lot of talk about existence and authenticity and like, like living true to yourself. And even though I'm in a completely different head state from when I first like read and learned that information, it's still something that like reigns true, and that because like I think substances, it could be coke, molly, weed, or it could be like, lamotrigine, mood stabilizers, antidepressants. Like, no matter what, it challenges like who you truly are. It challenges like your raw, undeterred, and like completely distilled brain. um if you, for example, like, let's talk about your situation specifically. If you're high as fuck on quote unquote ganja the entire time, then who are you truly? How can you ascertain who is your true and honest self? Likewise, if you're fucking rattled up on Zoloft or Adderall, who are you truly? It's like, it's a very, I think, difficult question. Like, because it's like, how can you be authentic if you're not in a quote unquote authentic state? And that's like, I'm not saying I agree with that. Like, we'll talk about it more, but like, that's the first question that comes to mind, because it's tough. Like, even if you are happy using substances, it's like, are you truly yourself? Are you sure that you can't be happy if you were like more sober? But like, it's like, I think of that very stupid fucking saying. Drunk mind speaks sober thoughts. Because it's like what the fuck, like, like, a drunk mind isn't a sober existence, though. You still have a very, like, there's something interfering with your brain and how you act when you're drunk. So even if it's sober thoughts, it's not a sober action. um but like, I'm just bringing that up because that is like, that is like really what's at the forefront of this question. And I think, like, I have a lot of questions for you that I'll ask. And I think, just to lead off, and, you know, to agree with you, like, with all that said about how substances deter your ability to live life honestly and truthfully, if smoking on that gateway, as Freddie Gibbs put it, is what eases you or helps you exist and find better avenues for you to exist, then it's like, why try to prevent that? Like, you know, it's a weird thing of like, when they tell you that you might have a problem or you're addicted. And I'm talking about, in your case, if this was a more serious substance, there'd be like a kind of a different topic. I don't know, because like, weed and weed culture is just kind of newer in the grand scheme of things, once that's now like legal and more like normalized. There's a lot to it where it's like not as bad as you think, but it's like, the people who say that like people who say that you can't get addicted are wrong. It's like, both of those are like, are true. It's not as scary, but it's still like, can be like a quote unquote like scary thing. But at the end of the day, it's not fucking heroin or meth. um I digress. I feel like there is like, it's a bit unfair if I were to tell you that, like, you need to sacrifice what's currently making you happy for you to understand reality, because that's wrong. If it was another thing, like, it would be wrong to say like, hey, you're on like Zoloft that makes you feel better. But if you have guilt taking Zoloft, then like, should you kick it? Of course the answer would be much different. And I think like weed only has like, really has like such a huge stigma beyond it being different from prescription meds. I'm not a doctor. Don't actually fucking put anything that I say on me. But like, a lot of it's like, weed has a stigma because doctors are most likely not going to prescribe you to like smoke an ounce or whatever. Not saying that's how it should be, but it's truth. It's a sticky situation. And I think what comes out to me the most from your question that, it's very similar to how the previous question I just answered is what your question's lacking. When you talk a lot when you talk about weed dependency and like the precedent of what we know about weed dependency, whether it be in anecdotes or stories or PSAs, there's a lot of like the stereotype that getting high helps you forget everything. It talks about getting rid of the negative. It talks about no negative. If that makes sense, like getting high just to forget the pain, to ease the existence. Um, which your question does not do. It's kind of rather very different because it's like not like, you weren't saying that you're depressed in everyday life. You're trying to forget that. You're like, it makes you happy. Like you're filled with joy by doing it. And so, like I hope that makes sense. But there is still something lacking that I just want to ask you is like, are you depressed? If you don't use it, like what's going on in your brain when you're sober, and how does it impact you and how you behave? Because it's interesting that you have a very stable and healthy relationship with the effects. Granted, it's not like the usage, but like how getting high makes you feel. So when you're sober and when you're not high, ascertain, I guess just in general, is like, who do you talk to for your troubles? Do you talk to your fiance much about it? Do you talk to a therapist? Do you have like a friend that you rely on? Because I think that the only way to move forward with like helping you out and giving you an actual answer for your question is like fully understanding your situation. You know, what do they think about your weed usage? What does your fiance think, and how big of an impact does it have on your relationship? And fiance is a middle like ground between casual partner and like marriage partner. So like, is it something that could threaten like y'all getting married? Like, does it affect y'all's relationship for the worse or for the better? And I mean that in the sense of just like, weigh it against each other. It's like you could have like how it negatively impacts her or you or like the relationship itself. Like take all of that into mind. But like when I'm talking about if it affects it for the better, if you being high, you're still being able to be attentive while also just being so elated and enthusiastic. Like if you can soberly gauge the positivity of weed usage in your life, and you could be like, here's the genuine positive effects with like little to no like negative effects, let them in on how you see it. Like show them and try to like get them into your shoes a bit, to be like, yo, here's just what's going on, because everyone has a different relationship to it. Absolutely. But like, before we go, or before we send it a kiss goodbye, I think it's something that is best guided in tandem and not by yourself. It's not like, I think the best thing moving forward is have other people fully check you on it. Check yourself before you wreck yourself, if that makes sense. Like, get a second opinion to view, observe, and take in, how you use weed and what it does to you, and like, allow them to be like, okay, like, is this healthy? Like, what can improve? What can you change? Or like, what's like good enough? If it, and like going back to like what I said about like my problem, like getting into it, is like that question of living authentically. If weed and how you use weed, and just like if it makes you happy and makes you genuinely get what you want out of life, well then that might very well be you living authentically. And I think if it grants you that honesty and relief, and as long as you're in it for yourself and the others around you, fuck yeah. Like it's not a bad thing, but it's something that I think other eyes and other understandings could help you on it. Because for all I know, there's something that you're hiding that you're using it to like kind of repress instead of dealing, like a problem that no one just knows about. So I would say just guide and try to find the negatives just to see, because I think understanding it from a perspective that isn't just you high off your ass the entire time, that can give you better insight into, I guess, just quote unquote how to fix it or how to change in the way that you want to change. But from what I know and from what I've heard, you're doing well enough. It's a funny little thing. So we'll finish this episode off and your question off with two songs that I picked for entirely different reasons. The first song is not about weed whatsoever or how weed makes you feel. It's a band that I've always associated with weed and I think has lyrics about weed, and that you could like say that this song is about weed, but it would fully be a stretch. But I just want to take into the I want to take into consideration the final line of it, which is just call me by your name, by my name. Kind of just like asking others to see you in this light and who you truly are, if that makes sense. Because people can like look at your situation from the surface and be like, why the fuck do you use weed that much? Not looking into the positive effects it has. So just tell them, call me by my name, which is Bloodmouth from Guitar Fight from Fooly Cooley. What a fucking ripper. The second song, I cannot pronounce it. I'll just put it in the bio. I believe the band is Boltinetsky Sad. It's a Russian band that when I put in Google Translate, I'll just also leave off with this final line. A simple child with open eyes for a world full of love and suffering. It's about anxiety and relaxation and moving forward and trying to figure out how to be happy, which I think you've already tried to figure out. And you possibly already fully figured it out. You know all the answers. I don't. But, just let me know how it goes. And I hope that by talking to other people about it, like that they're honest and respective to your feelings, and and they get you, like they understand what you're going through. Find, just open up your heart so others can openly receive it. I love y'all a ton. Thank y'all so much once again. You know where to reach me. twinkledad69 at gmail.com, at emo advice show 775-710-5150, and then I'll edit my address in later. Hell yeah. Thank y'all so much, and I'll see you so soon. This is Guitar Fight from Fooly Cooley with Bloodmouth and a Russian song by Boltinetsky, Sad. Thank you once again. I love you, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye now.